Howdy, folks. I'm Handsome Helium, heroically hampering horrible, haunting hands.
I'm Amber.
And here are more haunting hands for us to heroically hamper? Who's coming up with these things? Amber? And folks, I wanted to throw this out there. In less than 2 weeks, we'll hit 1,000 episodes of Brian Toner and Friends. Or we might also hit 1,000 subscribers. I'm thinking that we're going to hit the episode mark first. So let me know what you want to do for either of those milestones.
We've had some fun suggestions, and maybe we'll have to make like a poll or something, or find some way for you to vote on them.
Yeah, so that's what we're kind of thinking. But let's get started. Alright folks, our first letter is titled, Am I a Jerk for Punishing Our Nieces and Nephews Over the Damage That My Brother-in-Law Did to Our House? I have a home office and decided to have some light renovations done. I looked into hiring a professional contractor, but my wife wanted me to hire her brother. I was hesitant. First, he's a handyman and not a contractor. Second, he doesn't have insurance or even many of the tools required to do the job. All of the contractors that I spoke to are insured, and he had to borrow my tools. Third, I had to pay him money up front to cover the cost of the materials, while the contractors all have accounts with supplies, so they don't require any upfront money. My wife talked me into it because he needs the money and he has a family. We decided to take a vacation while he was going to work and came back to a mess. The carpet was soaked and moldy, nothing was done. Materials were everywhere, and it smelled like a swamp in our house. Apparently, when he drilled a hole into the wall, he didn't locate the water line and hit it. He only noticed the leaking when he came back from lunch and the carpet was soaked. He tried to find the shot off, but he couldn't, so he tore into the wall to try and stop the leaking, which made it worse, on top of which he couldn't stop it either. He panicked and called a coworker who came over hours later and found the shut-off valve. Instead of calling us immediately, he left the house as it was, and I guess it was out of sight, out of mind. The repair cost ended up being triple the original cost. Since his family are living on Section 8 housing and other government assistance, we decided last year to start saving to take them and her parents on a beach vacation this year in December as their Christmas gift. We told them about it a couple months ago so everyone could get their calendar in order. I told my wife that we should cancel the trip and apply the money to the cost of the repair. This has caused an argument between us. My wife says it's not fair to punish her nieces, nephews, and parents since they've been excited about the trip and they could never afford to go on their own. I argued that we couldn't afford to eat the cost without it affecting our budget. She loves her nieces and nephews and keeps on saying that I'm unfairly punishing them. We're supposed to go to her parents for dinner tonight, and she forbid me from canceling the trip or even bringing up the subject. I don't think that I can look at her stupid brother without calling him stupid. Alright folks, what do you think? Jerk or not the jerk?
Not the jerk. I mean, you've been put in a really bad position. It's unfortunate that you went with him because it seems like you knew this was a bad idea and your wife kind of pressured you into this. He is not a contractor. He's not even a good handy person, because as soon as he hit that water valve, he should have called some professional in or something. And he should have cleaned up the mess instead of like just walking out and leaving your house as it was. He has done serious damage to your office and has consequently cost you a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so I think it's fair to say to your wife, like, yeah, it's unfortunate that innocent people are going to lose out on a Christmas trip, but would they rather have you sue her brother for the cost of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a few different solutions here. One, you can have the cousin basically work towards paying this stuff off, right? He can do stuff around the house, he can do chores, he can mow the lawn, all kinds of things. I mean, I don't know what he has for skills, but apparently renovations is not one of them. So I think that he can do some stuff to help make up for the loss. I don't know exactly how much this repair is costing. If you can afford it and your wife is really set on this trip, then I think this is something that's going to have a lot of talk, a lot of discussions to figure out exactly what you can afford, how much is within budget. Are we talking about like taking out credit card debt? Because if you're talking about taking credit card debt, then I think that's a bad idea. If you are just saying, well, it's going to dig into our finances and we have the money we could do this if we wanted to, but I don't want to now, then that might be a little bit of a different situation to say, well, I understand like this is a bad situation, but it does maybe come across as saying, oh, we have all this money, but we're going to refuse to go on this trip because of this incident.
It just seems like OP's been put in a bit of a bind. And like, I feel like, do you and your wife have joint finances or separate finances? Like, how much money is she making? Because if she's dead set on this, why doesn't she take this money out of her budget?
Yeah.
Or why doesn't she pay off what her brother's damage out of her budget, you know? It's really unfair to expect you to eat the whole cost of it.
Yeah, I certainly think so. And it sounds like they do have enough money to go on extended vacations. They just came off of a vacation and then they're going to go on another vacation. So it doesn't sound like they're hurting for money, right? And then on top of that, like the renovations for the office. So this all seems like very pricey stuff. And maybe it's just that they couldn't afford it right now, but could afford it in the future. I do want to kind of go along with what you were saying with the wife stuff. Like the wife convinced OP to do this, and in some respects, like she went against OP's recommendations, and it almost feels like she's kind of responsible to some degree for a lot of what ended up going down.
It is, and it feels like she and her brother, she's like, well, we should have no consequences. OP should just eat the entire, have the entire. I mean, I guess indirectly it cuts out of your household finances, but still, it seems like she's not being held accountable. It seems like her brother's not being held accountable. It's just you who is paying for the mistake. And yes, you ultimately hired him, but it was on bad information on your wife's part.
Yeah. But let me know what you folks think. So anyhow, take care and good luck. And alarming reply 6286 says, not the jerk. In what world does your wife live in that it's okay to pay a family member to damage your home, pay for the repairs caused by a family member, and then pay again to reward said family member? Tell everyone that the trip is postponed for a year. Repairs need to be completed. Edited to add, it's not a punishment to not go on vacation. That language is inflammatory. At worst, it's disappointing to not go, but there are hundreds of ways to be kind and generous with kids and parents that won't put you into debt.
And that's another thing is like, yeah, with trips, you kind of have to spoil the surprise in advance, but it's still a gift and you're not owed gifts.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to expect that gifts can be changed if circumstances change.
Yeah.
And so I feel like this is a very reasonable, like, our circumstances are now drastically different than they were when we made this offer. I'm sorry we can't do it this year. I think that's a really good way of handling it.
Yeah. And Fault Realistic 9344 says, how about just postponing the trip for a year or two? Tell the family at dinner that due to the repair cost, it just isn't going to be in the budget this year. You don't have to lay the blame anywhere, though. Everyone will have their own opinion as to who is at fault. You have to fix your office. That is the priority. You should not have to go into debt over a gift. Good luck. And Miserable Smoke 58.5 says this is the best approach. Handle it like an adult with grace. I mean, I really do think postponing the trip is something that the wife is hopefully going to be a little bit more accommodating towards, to say, well, we aren't going to cancel it, we're just going to postpone it by a year. Alright folks, our next letter is titled, My wife got mad at me for pointing out how much she has been influenced by TikTok lately. Edit, everyone is projecting their own negativity in the comments. I never said that I was mad about these things. I never said that they were negative things. I just pointed out where she was getting them all from, and she got mad at me. Not the other way around for that. My wife got TikTok around Christmas and by February had completely quit watching her usual television shows. She uses that time to scroll on TikTok. She started making bread from scratch because she saw other people doing it on TikTok. And edit, I like the bread. I'm not complaining about the bread. She's made me do 3 home improvement projects because of the things that she saw on TikTok. Edit. I've always done home improvement projects, just the last 3 have been TikTok inspired. I'm not complaining about doing the projects. Today, we are going to go see the Barbie movie because she keeps hearing about it on TikTok. We haven't been to a movie theater in over a decade. We prefer to watch movies at home. Edit. Because she has a major anxiety issue in dark places with crowds. That's why we prefer watching movies at home. But she doesn't want to miss out on this TikTok trend, so she's pushing through her anxiety. So when I pointed out that she was only doing all of these things because of TikTok and how much it influences her, that's how companies pay TikTokers to influence people like her, she got mad at me for telling the truth. Alright, folks, what do you think, including all those edits?
OP, it's very clear. The way you're saying it, it frames it like it's a negative. And I know you say it, you're not saying it as a negative, but you basically told her, oh, look at you following these marketing people's gimmicks.
Yeah.
Like, you should be happy that your wife has found something that's helping her deal with her anxiety.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it seems silly or childish to you. If this being part of the social media trend is able to help her overcome her anxieties, I feel like that's a really awesome step.
Yeah.
And like, again, making bread. I know you're like, oh, well, I like her bread. So then what's the problem? Why are you pointing out these things if they're not bothering you? Or if you're not trying to show how you're not one of the influenced sheeple or something.
Yeah, I could understand OP being a little more concerned if she was into dangerous trends, things that were causing harm or strife in their marriage. Then I could be like if she suddenly picked up on pranking people, right? And it's like, oh, it's a TikTok trend to prank people, and she started doing these horrible pranks to OP. I could understand him being like, why are you doing these things that you're seeing on TikTok, right? But it sounds like these are all very positive improvement types things. People will be influenced by things. Like, you cannot live life without being influenced by something. If you read a book, you're going to be influenced by the book. If you watch a television show, you're going to be influenced by that television show.
You just have to go live in the woods.
I think that the thing is that we're all aware that there's some level of influence in our lives at some point in time. And sure, you should be aware of your biases. You should be aware of those, but that doesn't mean you need to go around pointing out about how, look, this person's influenced by this thing, right?
Yeah. And again, like, having a little motivation can go a long way. And like, sometimes I am motivated to push through my anxiety by Pokemon cards. And that's, it's silly, but if it helps, it helps. And I feel like anxiety can be such a hard thing to deal with that, like, any coping techniques that are not harmful are a great thing.
Yeah. Well, let me know what you folks think. So anyhow, take care and good luck. And Geico commercial says, TikTok may influence people, but it seems like your wife is just discovering new ways to possibly improve her and your life. Making her own bread, home improvement, cinemas sounds like a win-win to me. I mean, at least it's better than doing TikTok dances in the middle of Walmart. And OwnBit2530 says, she may be influenced by TikTok, but they don't sound like bad influences. She wants to try new things and go out to the movies. What's the problem? And Planic says, true, I wish my wife made fresh bread. And Master Collections 6612 says, I made fresh bread a handful of times. It's really underrated. Except the recipe from Alexandria Bakes. That was amazing. Fresh bread is amazing.
It is. Now I want more. Brian just made bread the other day, and it's so good, and now I want more.
Alright, folks, our last letter is titled, Should I Apply for Disability? And this one was submitted to my email by someone who is looking for advice. So let's see if we can give them some advice here. I'm a 23-year-old non-binary. I am neurodivergent, and this has had an impact on me throughout my life. Since turning 18, it has been a struggle to find a sustainable way of living, as it affects school, work, and my social life. I have had some pretty bad episodes that resulted in difficulty keeping work, lost housing, and time in the hospital ward. This, in the past, has been pretty shameful for me, but I have used that shame to best of my ability to try and push for a better situation, with therapy, psychiatrists, and job coaches. While things aren't perfect and I still run into pitfalls, I am doing significantly better than I was. I don't reach even close to the emotional intensity that I have dealt with in the past. I am taking an online course to earn certificates. I have a comfortable job in my desired field that works with my needs, and I am working on saving for my life goals. Now that the context is out of the way, here's the situation. While I'm not currently living with my parents, I have relied on them heavily in the past, and they do still help me with things like the phone bill. I do owe them some money for helping me with a car as well, around $3,000. I am very appreciative of them, and they're very supportive, and my dad has been very kind and flexible on payments when things are tight. My parents are pushing me pretty heavily to apply for disability. My stepmom currently receives disability, so she is familiar with the process, and due to my past struggles, they think that it would be very beneficial for me. We have waffled back and forth on it for some time. My hesitations are, it's a long legal process, I don't plan on remaining in my state much longer, and so I don't want to get wrapped up in disability case. While I don't have anything shady that I'm up to, I don't really vibe with having to give up a certain level of privacy over my finances. I have heard from other recipients that it can be pretty taxing, making sure that none of your accounts go over the limit, 2,000 at a time, I believe. I have had a steady and consistent progress for a while now, and I'm going up career-wise as well. While life does happen and my situation could change, I don't think that it would be good for me to plan for the worst case scenario when I'm actively doing good and improving, and have been consistently for the past year. I know that ultimately the decision to apply is all mine as I'm an adult, and I'm wary of having this conversation with my parents as I do feel like that I owe them, and I don't want to disappoint them, as that's already a pretty big complex of mine. Thanks for reading, and I hope that it's not a total mess to read through. I appreciate what you do. Some additional information. After discussing it with my therapist, she says that she agrees with me on the basis of improving mental state and life skills, as well as the fact that insurance that I would receive on disability could impact my ability to receive therapy and psychiatric treatment. I wasn't sure if this was relevant, but I am making the transition to van life for the purpose of saving up money for later in life, which is partly why I don't want to be anchored to Iowa, or have a limit on the amount of money that I can keep in my savings account. This decision to do van life has been approved by my parents and therapists, so no tension exists there. All right, folks, what do you think? What advice do we have for our poster?
All right, OP, it sounds like you're pretty well made up that you do not want to apply for disability. So the question is, how do you best handle this? The first thing I want to kind of remind you of is, I know your parents have done a lot for you, but also remember that they are the ones who chose to bring a child into the world. And so while it's great you have supportive parents, you can let go of some of that guilt, and you feel that they've been really nice and supportive because they're doing their job as good parents. And so I guess the big question is, how do you broach this effectively with your parents? And I'm wondering if maybe, since your therapist agrees with you, it might be helpful to bring them into one of your therapy sessions if they're receptive to that idea and it feels safe to you, because your therapist may be able to frame it in a way that's more understandable to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's all really well said. And OP, your life is your life. And also, it sounds like disability is going to be a lot more pain than it's worth. You're moving up, and like, how is that going to impact your job? Are you going to have to quit your job? Are you going to have to give up on some other things because you are taking disability? Maybe they could apply for disability but then not take disability. I'm not really exactly sure how all that works.
Yeah, well, from what I understand, first of all, there's no guarantee that you would even be eligible for disability if you're applying on the basis of neurodivergence. I've briefly looked at how that works with autism, and it's really hard to get disability with autism. They have all kinds of you have to have worked a certain amount of time, but not more than a certain amount of time, or there's a lot to it, and it's not an easy thing. And there's nothing stopping you from applying for disability in the future when it's a need. It sounds like it's not a need for you right now, but if you have a built-up safety net, then it's going to be, if you get to a point where you do need disability, yeah, it can be a long process. Hopefully that safety net you have will help you. So I think maybe also using the point about not being able to save money, and maybe that would be helpful to your parents too.
Yeah, I mean, also, it sounds like taking disability might actually do more harm in the respect that you're not going to be able to save up, you're not going to be able to put money away like you want for the future, and those are two of your goals for van life. So if that's going to impact those goals, then applying for disability or taking disability does not align with what your current goals are. And sure, maybe something will happen, maybe the worst case scenario will happen. And at that point in time, you can take some time and work on the disability at that point in time. But if you don't need it right now, you feel like you're doing really well for yourself, then I say that it's amazing. I'm proud of you. I'm happy that you're doing well and that you're succeeding in a way that is meaningful to you and that you're doing great. But let me know what you folks think. So anyhow, take care and good luck. Enjoy your transition to van life. All right, folks, it is tea time. Grab your beverages of choice. I've got some tea right here, and Amber, she's got a joke.
Why was the little boy so cold?
I can tell you exactly why the little boy was so cold. It's because there was a snowstorm, and they ran outside into the snowstorm, and they didn't have any, protective gear or anything like that. And they were just playing out there for a few, and then they're like, oh, I'm very cold. And so then they came back inside to warm up.
That makes sense, because it was December.
That makes sense, too. And I have Mega Mint. All right, folks, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for watching. Happy Sunday, special Sunday. I hope it's as special for you as it is for me. Amber, we need some kind of moral advice and or guidance, and please have it in the form of a slogan for a really bad construction company.
Maybe this will be another anti-moral. It seems like you give me a lot of prompts that need anti-morals. Just hire us, and we won't have to worry about a thing, because we won't be doing anything. You'll be the one paying 3 times when we mess things up.
Yeah, that would be a good slogan for a bad construction company. Thanks so much for watching, and we will see you all tomorrow.
Bye!